So if you've ever been browsing through New York City's real estate listings, you've probably come across the word co-op, which makes total sense because about 3/4 of Manhattan's inventory are co-ops. And that just begs the question, what the f*** co-op? It's a super common question. I don't blame you at all for having it. Prior to getting licensed, I had a totally different idea of what co-ops were. In Texas and in LA, the idea of cooperative housing to me meant like, we have shared responsibilities on who does the yard work and that type of thing. It doesn't really happen like that here in New York. It's much more of just how the building is filed. So you have two main types of building. You have your condos and your co-ops. And when you purchase in a condo, you're actually buying physical space. You're buying the property. You're buying real estate. Block and lot number, all that, file your own taxes, that type of thing. When you buy in a co-op, what you're actually buying are shares of a corporation that owns the building. That corporation then provides you as a shareholder with a proprietary lease so that you get that unit. It's a way of divvying up the responsibilities, making the responsibilities cooperative. There's a number of differences you should know about them. Primarily cost. Typically, condos are more expensive, but co-ops typically have a much harder approval process. They might require more down. There's a bunch of regulations, and you have to go through an interview process that can be extremely strenuous. Co-ops can also just tell you no after your interview, and they don't have to disclose why at all. I have no idea how that's legal, but as my favorite drag queen says, we eat the cards we're dealt. So there's that. It's a good idea to have an agent that's familiar with the building and the process of a co-op application. You definitely don't want to do it alone. They're hundreds of pages long normally. Another thing to keep in mind is what would happen if you have to move for work, and how likely is that? Because it's much easier to sublet out a condo than it is a co-op. They're each different, but typically there's application fees, sometimes there's interviews. It's a whole thing. Condos are much easier. But that also translates to how the people in the building interact with one another. In condo buildings, it's typically much more transient. People don't have as much invested in the building because they don't own it. In a co-op, it's much harder to have tenants, and so you're a lot more likely to get a knock on the door from the neighbor asking to borrow a cup of sugar, that type of thing. It's all about personal style. It's all about what you qualify for and what you can afford. But in general, it's just all about knowing what you want and where to look for it. I could go on. There's a lot of other moving parts. Closing costs are different and all that. You can find more information on my website, rustinlow.com. If this was helpful at all, you could tell me thank you by hitting like and subscribe. Those numbers really do help me. And if you have any other questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. If you want them in a video format, I'll try to be answering some of those ongoing. And if you have a more specific question, feel free to email me. It's rustin@compass.com. All right, that's all for now. Hasta luego.